Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another discussion video. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about Bandai's design philosophy, what they've been doing in recent sets, a few things that I don't think they should ever really do in the card game. It's kind of like a plea. Bandai, please do not do these things. Some of them they've already done. We've learned from them. We'll talk about it. With that being said, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you can stay updated with awesome Dragon Ball Super content that I post here. If you're looking for a Dragon Ball Super community to get plugged in with, make sure to check out the Discord in the description below. Excellent, helpful group of people. And finally, guys, if you'd like to directly help out the channel, there's two ways you can do that. Number one, check out the Patreon in the description below. Lots of competitive content for you guys now that we are a week away from Nationals. Nationals hype. And the other way, guys, you can help if you want to pre-order any of your Set 8 stuff or buy any of the cards to talk about in this video. Make sure to use my link to TCG Player in the description below. All that helps out a lot, guys. Really appreciate each and every one of you. And if you are at Nationals, come say what's up to me. I really want to meet all you guys that watch the channel. But with that being said, we will talk about this. So, Bandai, please, if you're listening, do not do or repeat these things that have been done in the game or that potentially can be done in the game. So these are kind of the cardinal rules of card games that you should never break. Of course, card games, there's tons and tons of variations, possibilities, combinations of cards that can lead to all kinds of crazy combos. We've seen that, you know, in Mecha Frieza and SS3 and Super Shenron, things like that. But there are certain rules that I really don't think any card game should break, and these are what I call the cardinal rules. Now, like I mentioned, Bandai has done some of them, but I really do think that since their mistakes with Super Shenron, with SS3, Bandai has made great strides in card design. Like, everything out of Draft Box, everything in the more recent sets, like everything up to like set 5 or 6, with the exception of Super Shenron, has been very, very well balanced. You know, apart from a few things, very, very small things. But what I want to talk about are these cardinal rules that I have that a lot of people I think would agree with. I've talked about a lot of these things with other people, and these cardinal rules are generally agreed upon. There's no like rule book of them or anything, but the cardinal rules of card games that a designer or a design team should not break. Number one being skip turn, and of course we saw this in Dragon Ball Super with Super Shenron. Skipping turn mechanic, if you look at things like Naruto, there's like a super overcosted mission card that requires you to pitch your entire hand to skip your opponent's next turn. And now that is like, you know, obviously they put the skip turn mechanic in the game, but it's completely unfeasible to do so. Like skipping your whole hand and pitching your whole hand and getting rid of all your chakras, all your spells, things that interact with your opponent and help you win the game. It's not worth it to skip turn in that situation. In Yu-Gi-Oh, skip turn has never been viable. Like, there's never been a really viable strategy that says skip your opponent's next turn and take an extra turn and kill them. Mostly because Yu-Gi-Oh is a much faster game, and you know, we have one turn kills. But besides the point, we saw that in Dragon Ball Super. Super Shenron was a mechanic that a lot of people thought was fair somehow. I really still don't understand that argument that Super Shenron was fair and balanced, that we needed to kind of learn to play around it. In my opinion, and in the opinion of many other people that I've talked about, I think the majority opinion is that Super Shenron was a tier 0 format. And you know, the first event we saw it at, the Charlotte Celebrations, there was one in top 8. Danny Wynn created the deck on the spot, and since then the deck was tweaked, worked on. They found that the best variation of the deck was Height of Mastery Super Shenron with Victory Strike and Swap for Storm. And from there on, the deck was unrivaled. It won Dallas, it won the Springfield event, and that was pretty much the end of its lifespan there. But towards the end, I mean, we saw this deck consistently increasing in top cut numbers because skipping turn is such a broken mechanic. If you look at it from a fundamental standpoint, the differential in resources is what really makes the Super Shenron deck unfair in terms of skipping turn. So for example, let's say you were playing against the Storm variant of Super Shenron, not the Height of Mastery variant. Let's say you're playing against the Blue Yellow or the Blue Storm variant, right? So you have, let's say you're playing blue, you have Senzu right? Senzu is known to be one of the best cards to combat Storm, combat any type of aggro, because it's basically a 5k combo that you don't have to recommit every single attack. It's a free 5k combo for the duration of the entire turn, right? So your leader's a permanent boost. That goes away when your opponent skips your turn. So you might need 2 Senzu Beans to stop your opponent from going in on you with a bunch of 15k attackers, but against Super Shenron, they can just like let off the gas, skip turn, and your 2 Senzu Beans, you know, the effect falls off, and they have an entire turn where every one of their attackers restands. Like, think about Source of Power Son Goku in Super Shenron, where that thing is attacking 4 times and potentially taking up to 4 life, basically drawing you 4 cards. That's 4 cards you're drawing plus your draw for turn, skipping your opponent's turn. Your opponent's seeing no new cards. They have to defend their life with what they have available to them. And if you add that to like a Height of Mastery that taps them out and does that 2 times in a row, that's where the fundamental aspect of a deck like Super Shenron skipping your turn becomes absolutely broken. So just wanted to give you guys that fundamental aspect of why skipping turn is just, and especially in this game, a cardinal rule that should never be broken. The next one I want to talk about, hand looping. So we did see something similar to this in Dragon Ball Super already. What hand looping is essentially consistently ripping your opponent's hand to 0 in a unprecedented timely manner. So like turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. In Dragon Ball Super, it's really hard to do turn 1 because there's no one drop that does it. But we saw in the Dragon Ball Super card game at one point, there was a hand loop with the Cell Chain on turn 3. You were able to drop Cell on turn 3. You could overwhelm out a Toa or a Mira that ripped another card out of your opponent's hand. And then you had a super combo that continued to rip more cards out of the opponent's hand, potentially ripping them to 0 cards in hand. Likewise, there was another type of the combo you could do where you would Cell Chain on turn 3, not attack to give your opponent any more cards. The following turn, you would drop the Super 17 engine, which would rip another 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. So they would maybe go into their next turn with like 2 cards in hand. That is consistent hand looping that we really don't want to see in the game, because what happens at that point is, it's just like skipping turn. You have such a huge resource differential, especially in Dragon Ball Super card game where decks draw so much, but Cell Chain putting a hand cap on you for 3, obviously mitigates all of that, and you really remove the fun factor and the skill factor out of the game. Now, I know a ton of people in the comments might be saying, well, Cell Chain should come back. There's tons of counterplays to play around it. You can play around it fundamentally, but that's not what the video is talking about. The video is talking about, this video in particular is talking about how to avoid these types of unfun interactions. And Bandai did hit the Cell Chain, they also hit Super Shenron. These things are no longer in the game, and I think for good reason. While I do think a more skilled player can play around Cell Chain, while I do think there are a lot of counterplays to it, which is a very unfun mechanic. And we come to the same thing with Gogeta 7 and Shenron Ramp, right? So the current play in Shenron Ramp is to get 7 energy, Gogeta 7 your opponent, which is doing the same type of thing, essentially hand looping them, because if you rip someone from 8 cards to 3 cards, or more than 8 cards to 3 cards, that is what I would essentially consider a hand loop. They don't have a fair amount of resources to defend themselves, and they also have a random reset of resources. This video is very intensive on resource speak, by the way, in case you didn't realize. So then when they are able to either Purunga ability or free roll piece of victory strike, you have no options to defend yourself. So that is one of the main problems with hand looping, another cardinal rule that I don't think should ever be broken ever again. I still think Gogeta 7 should be banned, but that's maybe another topic for maybe another video. Just ban the card. Anyways, next one on the list, FTK, first turn kill. Now, in Super Dragon Ball, we haven't technically seen any consistent first turn kills yet. SS3 Storm was able to do it if they went second and flipped blue-yellow when they were playing Storm. It was like a slight possibility. And then after that, there was the potential of Mecha Frieza to kill you on turn 1 with like Mecha Frieza veggies. Rip yourself awaken on turn 1 with Planet Vegeta, awakening, encouraging Presence Manaka, and then like Shugesh Nakaba into all your attackers. Very, very inconsistent, but it was possible. The problem with this game, sometimes, like we saw with full power Hurrigan Storm, is consistent turn 2 kills, or maybe what we'd call an OTK, a 1-turn kill. And that's another unfun aspect of the game where we want to avoid. Again, these are all things that Bandai has seen, and eventually I will get something that I want to talk about more preventatively, but we have seen consistent turn 2 kills in the game, potential turn 1 kills, and that's just an unprecedented amount of aggro that the swap package used to produce, with Bardock, Goten swapping into Unyielding Spirit Trunks to untap more energy, with Senzu Bean. All those kinds of things we want to avoid in the Dragon Ball Super card game design-wise. Those are more of the unfun things that really drive a player base away. These things like SS3, Super Shenron, Mecha Frieza, they did hurt the local scene for the Dragon Ball Super card game. We are on an incredible upswing right now. So if you're watching this video, haven't played in a while, we are in an incredible format right now. There's tons of diversity, tons of different strategies you can play: control, aggro, mid-range, a lot of different things you can play right now. But these are just things I want to talk about preventatively. The last cardinal rule I want to talk about for card games that I do not think Bandai should break: Floodgate type effects. Now, what is a Floodgate, you might ask? A Floodgate is a card that pretty much prevents your opponent from doing a specific type of thing. So a Floodgate in the Dragon Ball Super instance, for example, an older one you might consider to be Kurnoa. Kurnoa prevented the opponent from playing Shugesh. That was a Floodgate type of card. Then we had Burnish Bonds Borgos, the first card of its kind that basically floodgated your opponent out of offensively untapping energy. More recently, though, we see very popular floodgates like Striving to be the best on Goku, preventing all 2-drops your opponent controls from attacking, and King Vegeta, the Majestic Ruler. This card never ever needed to be printed. So this card came out of the draft box for And in a draft format, in a vacuumed draft format, the card's pretty cool. You get to 6 energy. By that point, the game has gone on quite a long time. Maybe it's okay to shut off all your opponent's effects and get the game pretty much to a state where it can end. Draft doesn't usually last that long anyway, but I understand. It's made in a draft format. It's relatively balanced in that format, but I don't think that argument is valid, because when you make a draft box, like a draft format, that the cards will be legal in the constructed format, which is the much more widely supported format. I don't think you can get away with that excuse, because I think you need to be able to account for how the cards will interact in the constructed format. Now, let's look at King Vegeta, I guess, from my point of view. In my point of view, this doesn't really support any older archetypes. This isn't like Ape support. This isn't like Mono Yellow Sand support. This is a 6-drop kind of bomb card that is never going to get played for 6 energy in a straight yellow deck. That's never going to happen. What's going to take advantage of it? A deck that ramps to 6 energy by like turn 3, turn 4, which is Shenron ramp or Purunga ramp. That's going to be the only deck King Vegeta is really going to see play in, especially in the current competitive format. So that was something that I think Bandai probably did oversight in their design philosophy for this set. I think that is a problem. King Vegeta is a stupid card. It's not unbeatable. There are extra card answers to it. There are ways to get around it. It's not always going to win the opponent the game when they drop it, but it's a stupid type of Floodgate card that, again, promotes the unfun aspect of the game. And that's one of the things that you might see a common trend with what I'm talking about here, whether it's FCKs, hand loops, or skipping turn. The number one problem is removing the fun aspect of the game, and you also typically remove the skill aspect of the game as well. It doesn't really take much to say, okay, you have no effects for duration of the game. How can you win out of that? That's like not a very skill intensive position to be in. What's more interactive, something like Frieza Prison. Some of you guys might hate that deck because it feels impossible to play against it, but at least they don't have necessarily super strong Floodgate effects. They do have Live to Fight another turn, but if they want to tap out on 3 for that, that's really consequential for them in the right circumstances. Where Shenron bringing out King Vegeta, they don't need to tap a single energy to do that with World Peace, and that brings up a problem of World Peace being a problem. But this isn't really the video talking about that. This is a video talking about Floodgates and other cardinal rules of the Dragon Ball Super card game that I would prefer Bandai not to break in the future. Another one I want to talk about that is coming out in set 8 is Peel Off the Cunning. There's also a 1-drop Trunks that goes along with it. So this card is a 1-drop red. I'm assuming they're going to make a 1-drop for every color regarding this, but it reads as follows. Auto, when you play this card, draw 1. Then for the duration of the game, if the turn player, so the player whose turn it is, if you don't know the terminology, would use the skill of a battle card or extra card to switch energy to active mode, they can't switch energy to active mode unless they choose 5 cards from their drop area and send them to their warp. So a few things with this card. This card is kind of redundant because every color now at this point does have a Burnish Bonds Borgos that punishes offensive on tapping. All those cards are answerable though, so I guess they decided to print this card that basically adds a lingering effect to the rest of the game. And those are always problematic because, you know, let's say you play a peel off and you draw a card off of it and you combo it away, and then like turn 4 later on, both players forget if the card was played, it's in the drop area, but it could have been comboed from hand, and you don't know if like the auto is lingering for the game or if that was last game. You kind of provide a bunch of problems with this. Same thing happened with Cronoa. It wasn't a widespread problem. It didn't really ruin a lot of games, but the lingering effects like that are very awkward sometimes. The other thing too is this card is not really needed. I did mention it's redundant, but also there's so much hate on energy, offensive energy, on tapping and aggressive plays like this is trying to stop. And this is like, there is counterplay to it because obviously you can counterplay the card, but you also have the option to remove 5 cards from your drop area, send them to your warp. But that really limits the type of deck you can play because that means you can't play Overwhelm in your aggro deck, which can be very problematic in certain situations. I just think this is another type of Floodgate card that we really don't need in the game. Unfortunately, it's being printed in set 8, and I will do a whole video talking about the red-yellow spoilers of the set, so wait for that if you haven't seen it yet. But with that being said, guys, these are just my opinions. I don't think these cardinal rules should be broken. If Bandai's watching this, I really hope they try to steer away from more Floodgate-esque effects. We need more effects that promote interaction, and counterplay was a great step in that direction. I love the way counterplay is right now. There's 1 or 2 decks that use it kind of degenerately, mainly Janemba, but that deck, you know, is pretty much on the decline right now. So I really think that the way they've promoted counterplay is really good. I just really want them to steer away from the cardinal rules I talked about in this video. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe in the cardinal rules? Do you think that they can do whatever they want? I mean, obviously they're a free company, they can do whatever they want, but how do you think they should operate, guys? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. You know, after the whole SS3 thing, I used to get really, really scared and nervous when Bandai would do like a set preview for the next set or like release some new cards. And I was like, man, what are they going to break this time? Between like Flute, SS3, Mecha Frieza is like, wow, we can't catch a break. Then we had a little bit of a rough road with Hurtigard Storm, and then we had Super Shenron, and that stuff all got resolved. And ever since then, we've had a lot of diversity, a lot of great stuff in the game, and I really like the direction where we're going. I don't want that to get misconstrued. But sometimes I just feel like I'm speaking into the void. You know, like I hope Bandai's watching this. I hope that my stuff makes sense. I hope what I'm trying to say here makes sense in the fact that we want to promote the fun aspect of the game as competitive as it is. It's still not fun from a competitive player standpoint to get floodgated with like King Vegeta or Striving. So hopefully that stuff gets across. If you guys disagree, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.